Welcome, everyone. This is the International Peace Coalition. This is the 95th meeting we've had in a row. And I want to thank everyone for all of their participation around the world, especially if you're new. Please introduce yourself during the discussion period, where you're from, what organizations you're with, and any activities that you're doing. We love to hear from new people. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your moderator today, as well as Dennis Small and Dennis Speed, who will be co-moderating with me. And we created this forum in order to bring together people around the world to actually have a real discussion on how to create true peace. There's been so much dysfunction and pitting different people against one another, when actually we should be common allies in the fight for true peace and prosperity for all of humanity. So if you are for that, you are welcome here, and we have open discussions around what we're doing and coordinating our activities around the globe. To start us off today, we'll have Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. So please go ahead, Helga.
Yes, hello to all of you. The world strategic situation is very confusing for most people, because almost every day some major shift and change occurs, and people are rubbing their eyes and say, you know, the world is really moving in so many different directions. How to make sense out of it? And therefore, I think it is important to sort of put the priorities of the importance of events first, and then everything falls into place. The whole world situation is still absolutely characterized by the change which was introduced after President Trump moved into the White House, and especially after he started to normalize relations with Russia. This was a complete rebuttal of the previous regime, where the neoliberal order had tried to basically, contain Russia, to, keep the unipolar world order somehow, the so-called rules-based order. And that was completely set up by President Trump. And, while certain things have been evolving, there is now clearly an effort to set a strategic trap for President Trump to derail his efforts with Russia and the efforts to get a peaceful settlement on the Ukraine crisis. Now, why are we saying that? There is now an increasing chatter in Washington in particular, but also elsewhere, about a pending decapitation strike by the United States against Iran. Now, Mike Waltz, on the 23rd of March, demanded that Iran should completely abandon its nuclear program, meaning, potentially even the civil nuclear program, or else face, quote, consequences. Now, obviously, there are reports that Netanyahu told the Trump administration that it would be possible to completely decapitate Iran without a full all-out war, but use the model of how Hezbollah was basically dismantled or severely weakened in Lebanon, how the Assad government was replaced very quickly in Syria, and to go for a regime change in Iran, to put in a regime which would be more friendly to the United States or to the West in general. Now, obviously, this would be a catastrophe, because it would cause complete havoc in all of Southwest Asia. It would drive the oil prices up. It would increase the gasoline price to $7, $8, $9, $10 per gallon. It could lead and actually trigger a complete financial collapse, and that way, also create the kinds of instability which would obviously ruin then the ongoing effort by President Trump to straighten out the relationship with Russia and with Putin. And that is the real aim of this whole operation. Now, there are very worrisome signs. The USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier is en route to Southwest Asia already. There are 2 other US aircraft carriers who are preparing for deployment. No goal has been yet announced. But there is right now a clear sign that this may be in preparation. And for example, former Congressman Kucinich sent an open letter to President Trump warning him that this is exactly what will happen. Now, this cannot be looked at separately from the effort by the Europeans to sabotage the Ukraine discussions in Riyadh between the United States, Ukraine, and the United States, where slow but moderate progress seems to have been made because President Macron called in a so-called meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which just took place 2 days ago in Paris, with Keir Starmer and Zelensky being there and 30 countries altogether. And the result of that was basically that, the Coalition of the Willing wants now to send no longer French and British troops to the border of Russia, but as a so-called reassurance force inside Ukraine. Now, that is quite ridiculous. This is even reported by, Western services like Reuters, that the British army is a joke, and to send thousands of troops is completely, not feasible. But it is a very nasty move because, by putting in troops now inside Russia, inside Ukraine, and where Russia had said very clearly that this is absolutely unacceptable, that they will not allow so-called peace troops by NATO countries, because that's what it would be. So this is obviously trying to preempt a pending total defeat of the Ukrainian army, which seems to be in ever worse shape. President Putin has said very clearly that Russia is in a position to militarily end the conflict if the diplomatic approach does not function. But, it is really much more at stake than just the Ukraine situation. It is the historic effort to reconcile the relationship between the 2 largest nuclear powers in the world. Now, this has caused a very harsh reaction from, among others, Foreign Minister Lavrov, who basically, totally blasted the Ukrainian behavior, saying they are lying all the time, even in the discussions in Riyadh. But then he really went after this latest European move by saying they are obviously acting in the tradition of Napoleon, of Hitler, of the Crimea War before. And that is naturally quite strong tobacco, as we say in German. I mean, to make this parallel to Hitler and Napoleon. But that's what is clearly in the mind of the Russians, because whenever they look at this, the possibility of having European tanks coming towards their border, it brings up the memory of especially the Great Patriotic War. And, the tone has become quite amazing. And Lavrov, in the same speech, said, the fact that Pistorius, von der Leyen, and Habeck say that they never want to reopen the Nord Stream pipelines means they're either sick or suicidal. Suicidal for sure for the European economy. I mean, otherwise, I can only say that the war hysteria in Germany is unbelievable. I mean, the normal population, we are talking to many people every day because we are organizers. The normal population is horrified. They see that hundreds of billions of dollars are being put out of the chimney for what? For the rearmament of Ukraine, for militarization of Europe and Germany, for, at the time when the infrastructure is collapsing. just a few days ago, they closed the main bridge in the central highway, the city highway in Berlin, leading to a complete chaos of the traffic. And that is after the collapse of the Carola Bridge in front of Dresden and many other such situations. So people are saying, why don't they spend the money on the infrastructure? Why do we rearm? And by the way, a lot of this money goes also again to the American military industrial complex, which on top of everything angers the population tremendously because they are faced with enormous cuts. Now, likewise, the population inside the United States is reacting very strongly against Trump. I don't know if he has noticed that so far, but we have been talking to some of the core MAGA people, and they are equally horrified, saying Trump promised to end all of these foreign wars. Why are we now bombing Yemen again? And so the situation is very volatile. And in all of this, you have an attempt to decapitate the Trump administration, not only by creating a trap to lure them into, the war against Iran, but also trying to aim at the key people who Trump has put in office to go after the deep state, especially C.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, and Radcliffe. So they are being or there are now demands that they should be held responsible for having been, sloppy with top secret information and using this supposedly safe signal channel for a discussion for discussing the bombing of Yemen, which it obviously was not, because the chief editor of the Atlantic magazine could sneak into this, which looks like a typical operation, of the deep state. Now, this is almost like a sprint. Who comes in first? Because President Trump, at the same time, has released all the FBI files on Russiagate from his first administration, and that naturally goes after the culprits who were responsible for that. So it is an extremely hot race, and one can only say one really needs to know history, one needs to know the role of the British Empire, and to understand, what is really at stake here, namely that the new multipolar order, which Trump is standing for, is not accepted by the forces of the old system, the neoliberal system, and that's what the war is all about. Now, that means we have to bring in a completely different approach, which is the idea that we absolutely have to catapult the whole strategic discussion on a higher plateau, a new paradigm, a new security and development architecture, which takes into account the interest of every single country, because only that way can we resolve all the regional conflicts, be it in Ukraine or be it in Southwest Asia. So that's my initial comments.
Thank you for that, Helga, for that opening. And I do want to just underline, when we talk about the British Empire, we actually do mean the British Empire, as is what's coming out more and more people are realizing. So thank you for that opening, Helga. Next, I'd like to bring into the discussion, which is really wonderful to have you on, Ambassador Hussein Mousavian, who's the former ambassador from Iran to Germany. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ambassador. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anastasia, and hi to everyone. I was asked by Helga to have a short talk about the latest situation between Iran and the US, possibility of war, and the nuclear dossier. During President Trump, actually, since last 3 months, we have been facing two different Trump, one before election and taking office, and one after election. President Trump, before taking office, he made multiple positive statements. First of all, he reiterated that his policy in the second term would be very different with the first term. He cares about Iranian nation. He wished even success for the Iranian supreme leader and insisted that he is after a peaceful deal and diplomacy with Iran. And more important, he said his only issue is Iran should not have nuclear bomb. With these statements, Iranian authorities also responded positively, and they said they prefer diplomacy and they are ready to engage with the US, to negotiate with the US, even directly to resolve the suspiciouses or misunderstandings about nuclear problem. But we have in practice, we have a different President Trump after he took office January 2025. Just 2 weeks after in office, he signed a memorandum reinstating the maximum pressure policy of his first term in 2016-2020. And surprisingly, this was signed when Prime Minister Netanyahu visited him in White House. At the same time, it was announced. The second problem is in the memorandum, he is not talking only about nuclear. He is talking about all disputed issues between Iran and the US, like regional, like terrorism, like human rights, like even Iranian defense and military capability, and so. But when I was comparing the 12-point list of Mike Pompeo during the first term of President Trump, Pompeo presented a 12-point as a conditions to negotiate with Iran. I saw exactly all 12 points in the same memorandum President Trump signed in 2025. But it was not only memorandum. He immediately started to implement a wide range of sanctions on Iran. Nevertheless, in mid-March, he sent a letter to Iranian Supreme Leader. Israeli source, they revealed that the letter is threatening, and President Trump has given a 2-month deadline to the Iranian side, either agreement or war. And the other problem is the contradictory statements we are hearing from top Trump's officials. Steve Witkoff, Trump's representative on the Middle East issue, had interview. It was very positive. He said, we are not after war. We are just on the nuclear. We are for verification program to show that Iran is not pursuing nuclear bomb, and so. Immediately, Trump's National Security Adviser Mike Waltz said the goal remains full disarmament and dismantling, full dismantling. It means Iran should dismantle all of the enrichment program, which is impossible. With these policies, President Trump in practice showed after he took in office, then Iran announced that Iran is not going to engage in direct negotiations. However, Iran would be open to continue indirect negotiations. The second issue is about the Iranian nuclear file. The IAEA and Iran tension has been escalated. On February 8, the IAEA reported the Iranian stockpile of 60% enriched uranium has reached to 275 kilograms, which the specialists, they say this is enough for 2 or 3 bombs. Nevertheless, Tulsi Gabbard, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, just some days ago said our assessment, the U.S. assessment, says that Iran is not pursuing nuclear weapon at the moment, and Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapon program in Iran. In December 2024, the EU three countries, Germany, France, UK, they informed the United Nations Security Council that they will use unilaterally, they will use a snapback mechanism. Russia has argued that the EU lacks the legal authority to unilaterally trigger the snapback. And simultaneously, Russia, Iran, and China have established a group of three negotiating the possibility of a nuclear deal. And in official statement, they have opposed to European and American policy on Iranian nuclear dossier. Just 2 days ago, Iranian Supreme Leader responded to President Trump's letter. For me, maybe 5 points is interesting in noticing this letter. One, in the first term of President Trump, Japanese Prime Minister paid a visit to Iran, met Ayatollah Khamenei, and delivered the message of President Trump. It was the time Trump withdrew from nuclear deal, assassinated General Soleimani, and then Ayatollah Khamenei said that he's not going to respond to President Trump, and he publicly said Trump was not worthy of a reply. But this time, Ayatollah Khamenei responded to President Trump, which is a positive point. The second issue is that although the letter, President Trump's letter was delivered by UAE, Iran's response was delivered to Oman. I mean, Iran wanted to show that they do not trust UAE because UAE, United Arab Emirates, because the UAE is ally of Israel and they are member of Abraham Accord and so, or they initiated Abraham Accord. They just wanted Iran, they just wanted to show distrust and showing that they do not like Abu Dhabi to be engaged in Tehran-Washington relations. The third point is that Iran announced they are not ready for direct negotiations with the US under the current policy of sanctions and pressures and threats. But they will engage in direct negotiations, and if there is a progress, they will go for direct negotiations with Iran. If there is no progress, there is no need for direct negotiations. As I understand, Iran has responded positively to every positive point of President Trump's letter, and they have made mutual counter threat to every threatening point of President Trump's letter. A lot of people, they are asking now if there is going to be indirect negotiations, who would be the mediator? I think Oman and then Russia, they have a higher chance to be mediator. About the sign of possibility of wars, Helga mentioned some points. I do not want to go to details. The first sign is that we notice the warmongers have become again active. Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing everything in his power to use Trump's era to drag the US into a war with Iran. Neoconservative voices who push the US into Iraq war are calling for a strike on Iran. Groups like FDD, Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Israeli Lobby, and Washington Institute for Near East Policy are once again promoting war with Iran, claiming there may be never a better time to attack Iran because now Iran is weak. However, President Trump and Ayatollah Khamenei, they both publicly have said they are opposing war. This is good that the two leaders, they are opposing war, but the problem we have is that the Trump administration is not united, is disputed whether we should go to war or diplomacy. Arab countries, Russia, China, India, international community, they are all against war. But with the following issues, which I am going to review with you, I think there is a possibility of military conflict between Iran and the US. First, the new wave of US-Israeli regional attacks. President Trump initiated a new extensive military operation against Houthis and declared that Iran would be held responsible for any attacks by Houthis on US or NATO facilities. Second, Netanyahu violated the Gaza ceasefire agreement and launched military attacks against Palestinians. As you know, hundreds of people, they have been killed during last 2-3 weeks. And simultaneously, Prime Minister Netanyahu launched a military strike on Lebanon and Syria. I mean, he is fighting in 3 fronts. I should add also Yemen, 4 fronts. Trump provided Netanyahu with weapons that the previous US administration had refused to supply. A $4 billion assistance was decided, which includes over 35,000 general purpose bomb bodies for 2,000-pound bombs and 4,000 bunker busting 2,000-pound bombs, which it said it's going to be used against Iranian nuclear facility. The next issue is the reality of military buildup. Helga mentioned that the U.S. aircraft, USS carrier Carl Vinson is on his way to South Asia, and we have read the news. The 2 other U.S. aircraft carriers are also ready to be employed. The U.S. has employed something between 3 to 7 B-2 bombers to Diego Garcia in the middle of Indian Ocean. In response, Iran has reinforced its defense system and deployed advanced missile. Iran and Russia and China had joined military exercise in the Gulf of Oman, showing off their military ties. The next issue, the reality is again a race between sanctions and nuclear issue. The US is increasing sanctions and pressures, and in return, Iran is ramping up its nuclear activities and missile deployment. The next issue is the reality of diplomatic ultimatum. You have read a lot that Trump has given 2 months ultimatum to Iran, and the reality of time limit we have, because we have October 2025, which is the period by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231 is going to be terminated. And if Europeans, they want, which they have already informed the United Nations Security Council, they can use a snapback mechanism. If they use, Iran has officially informed EU that they will withdraw from NPT. You can imagine with such a regional situation, if Europeans are going to use snapback, reimposing all international sanctions on Iran, and Iran is going to withdraw from NPT, this would really escalate the possibility of war. However, there is a chance for diplomacy. In my recent op-ed published at Middle East Eye, I just explained the factors President Trump can use in order to have a successful diplomacy with Iran. I'm just going to review with you, to share with you the outlines. First of all, I have insisted on the necessity of mutual respect if they really want to start a good negotiation. Second, there is a need for consistency between American words and American actions. They cannot in word call for diplomacy and in action to go for sanctions, threats, humiliation, or military escalation. Third, a deal should be based on international rules, because the US has shown during President Trump that they do not respect international rules. like they withdraw from NPT, from JCPOA, Iran nuclear deal, which was a clear violation of United Nations Security Council to 2231. If they are going to agree on different issues, they should agree the criteria should be international rules, not something beyond international rules. And the deal should consist of concerns of both sides, not only the U.S. concern, Iranian also, they have their own concerns. They both should agree that they would negotiate on the concerns of the other side. The other issue, the fifth issue, is about the sustainability of the deal. There is really a question, even there is a deal, even there is negotiation, even there would be an agreement between Iran and the US during President Trump, what is the assurance and guarantee that the next US president again would not kill the deal like what President Trump did in his previous administration? The other point is that they should discuss all the issues, but it doesn't mean that they should have a comprehensive agreement. They need a direct and comprehensive agenda, not comprehensive agreement, because it is impossible to agree on everything in a short period. They need to start with nuclear and go to the second one. For this, I have proposed that Iran and the US, they should have two lists, one list of disputed issues and one list about the issues of interest, because Iran and the US, they have many issues of disputed issues, but they have a lot of issues which they really have common interest. And they should go for implementation in phased approach. While they are negotiating on the nuclear, they should start cooperation on one of the shared and common interest issues as a confidence building measures. I mean, the best way to build confidence is to cooperate on the common interest, the shared interest, while they are negotiating the disputed issues. This is the formula which I have been insisting for years, but unfortunately nobody is listening. And the other suggestion is for Iran and the US to negotiate on a big economic package, because I believe economic cooperation is a good opening between the two countries and really can ease the tensions and facilitate broader issues, including the regional issues. If they have a big economic agreement, trillions of dollars, they are not going to kill each other in the Middle East. I think they would go for more economic cooperation. And then I have always been insisting about the necessity of people-to-people relation, nation relations. I mean, the Americans and the Iranian nation, they are not enemy of each other. They have never been enemy of each other. The states, yes, they have a problem and hostilities, but the people, they don't have problem together. That's why President Trump and the Iranian administration, they should open the door for people-to-people relation, like sport, like science, like academic relation, arts, culture, consular exchanges, and so. And the last one about the region, since there are a lot of talk about Iran-US dispute on the regional issues, I believe 4 principles would be extremely important if they want to have a regional compromise. One, Iran and the US, they mutually should respect the legitimate interest and role of each other in the region, and they should not confront each other on the other side's interest. Second, there is a necessity to contain security military conflict between Israel and Iran. Third, we need, to have a two-state solution in order to finish Arab-Israeli 80 years old conflict. And finally, we need to have a new structure between Iran and the Arab US allies in the Persian Gulf, Iran, GCC countries, and Iraq, to have a new cooperation system in order to, like European cooperation and union, which we have experienced during the last 50 years, which has been really successful. I mean, in this case, with this initiative, I think this is the best way also to end decades of Persian-Arab disputes. Thank you. I hope I did not go too much over my 10 minutes.
Well, we were riveted by what you were saying, so thank you so much. I mean, your expertise on this matter and how this people-to-people relationship can work. I personally, I very much appreciate it, and I think it's useful for others here to hear it as well. Thank you, Ambassador, for going through that for us. I'd like to bring in another person for the discussion. We have Colonel Elaine Corves, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. I don't have very good French, but he is a consultant in international affairs, former advisor to the French Ministry of the Interior in France, and he's been on the IPC regularly to report and give his expertise. And thank you so much for joining us, Corves. Oh, you're muted, my friend.
Vous m'entendez là?
Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Merci de votre invitation à prendre la parole.
Thank you for the invitation to speak here today.
Helga Zepp-LaRouche d'abord.
What has been said by Helga Zepp-LaRouche and the others, including His Excellency from Iran,
Un éclairage très intéressant.
who gave some very interesting explications.
Plusieurs mois, et disons depuis,
For several years now, for several months, since November of 24,
après l'élection
which was after the election of President Trump, but before he became inaugurated.
on a commencé à
Before
voir
that, we began to see circulated a certain press campaign
certains
based on some official declarations,
annoncés comme futurs responsables,
or those who would soon be nominated, who were threatening Iran,
empêcher
and who
l'Iran
said that they would prevent Iran from having a nuclear bomb,
faire des pressions maximum
and
sur
they wanted to exert a maximum of pressure on Iran,
de faire des pressions par des campagnes importantes
pressure through big campaigns with the public, the Iranian public, to incite them to overthrow their government. And this is the kind of propaganda that says in 1 week or in 1 month, the United States or Israel are going to attack Iran. But I answer to that these are only words. It's propaganda, because American strategic experts and even Israeli ones know very well that they cannot attack Iran, because although it does not have the nuclear bomb and does not want to have one, the official government policy is not to have a nuclear bomb, but it has developed its military industry, industrial and aerospatial activities to such a point that it's very advanced in ballistic missiles.
Ça a été une démonstration évidente par
And
les
there was a
frappes
demonstration given of this in the strikes by Iran
d'Israël qui n'ont tué
at several
personne, qui ont
places
détruit
in Israel,
l'installation militaire
and which
d'Israël.
destroyed nuclear installations in Israel. Everyone saw it. Our experts saw it, that the
Et que
shield was broken through these strikes and that they reached their objectives.
et cette précision
Through this power and through this precision, Iran has shown in ballistic terms
puissance de la région.
that it has exceeded the other powers in the region.
D'Amérique, voire Israël, dans le domaine
And the United States and Israel have to consider that.
balistique,
Iran has now a ballistic capability
les autres
that can dissuade its main enemies, which are Israel and the United States, can deter them from attacking Iran out of fear of the retaliation strikes that would occur. This was on the 1st of October 24. Iran showed that it was able to destroy installations, very important ones in Israel, and could shoot at American bases in the Middle East. So what we see as a threat, and President Trump has also said, if you don't agree with what we're doing, we're going to strike. Well, it's just propaganda, because Iran is able to deter the others, its enemies, to attack, not with a nuclear bomb, but with its ballistic capabilities. Next, you have to understand that President Trump is struggling within the United States against the deep state. And in order to become elected, he needed support from American citizens. And they understood that these citizens understood that they had been fooled by the previous administration, so they voted massively for Trump, because he talked the truth. But after he was elected in November of 24, President Trump needed the support of Zionist networks that are very strong in the U.S. Some even say that the Zionists are leading U.S. policy. And President Trump knows that he needs some support from this, and that he needs to bring them onto his side. And he needs it also in order to be able to achieve peace in Ukraine, as he has begun to do. And he's shown toward Palestine and toward Israel that he has become even more supportive of Israel, and letting Israel continue to strike Palestine in an unprecedented way. So this is a result of the internal forces that are confronting one another within the United States. There's also the Atlantic by this Jeffrey Goldberg journalist, and this was wanted, it was desired. We see that the conversation of this committee speaking about the strikes on Yemen, that there was a disagreement between G.D. Vance and the others who intervened. Tulsi Gabbard almost doesn't intervene, so we don't know if she really supports these strikes or not. But it seems that there are differences within this national security establishment at the highest level. I think this leak was deliberate to try and attack President Trump. It's an hypothesis that I have. I don't have any proof of it. I've been following for geostrategy for a long time, including in the U.S. And what I want to say is that President Trump is not really free to wage the policy that he was elected to carry out. He was elected in order to stop war, and he's supporting war in some places like in Yemen and in Palestine. So this puts him in opposition to his promises and to his base. Moreover, the disdain which the Vice President Vance showed in Munich at the security conference, where he denounced the consequences or the lack of consequential action by the European Union. And that shows, I think, that the leaders of the US have great disdain for the leaders of the European Union. And I have to say that I share that disdain, because they have become the executors of the oligarchical policy, and they are leading the European Union, and they are not defending the nation states of Europe. I link this situation in Europe to what's happening in Yemen, in Palestine, and in Iran, because this is an ensemble. The European leaders are refusing peace in Ukraine, and they are trying to prevent a peace agreement, a final one, between Russia and the United States over Ukraine. And these leaders are not working in the interest of the world or of their peoples or their states, but they're working, or let's say that their strategic error is to want to wage war against Russia, although it's failed until now, and their failure is now evident for the entire world. So their power is directly threatened, and that's why they are increasing the stakes. We can see that certain powers have been assumed by the European Union that should belong to states, and they don't care a bit about what happens to the Ukrainian people, or they are not respecting the treaties that have been concluded, including by the European Union. So Europe is completely losing hold, and it's going to trying to prevent a peace from being installed in Ukraine, or to only impose a certain peace by force, and that will also fail, and that will also ruin the political career of those who attempted to confront the first nuclear power in the world, which is Russia. So by integrating now Iran into the whole strategic picture, we see that the Iranian foreign minister and the Russian ones met together. They did sign a pact, which is commercial and strategic, and it says that the one will assist the other in case of an attack on one or the other. Although it doesn't say that, it does say that they would give help in the case of aggression, which would be not military assistance, but other kinds of assistance. In other words, if Iran is attacked, Russia and China would be obliged to assist, because of this pact, Iran. And they would be obliged to respect their signature in that respect. So these three countries will also be organizing naval maneuvers in the Oman Gulf. This was simultaneous, just with a couple of days difference after these signatures. So these maneuvers took place. So this is a very clear sign to say that this is to show that Iran is not alone, that China as well as Russia will support Iran if it is attacked. So in Washington, there are some people who are intelligent and who have understood what that means, and who say now, Now we cannot attack Iran, although President Trump more or less suggests that that could happen at some point. So I think if we have a conference like Helga Zepp-LaRouche has called for, we have to understand that most countries of the world do want peace, but until now, that under the impulsion of the international financial oligarchy led by London, and we saw just before that the role of the British Empire, Great Britain does not have the power that it used to have, the capabilities that it used to have. Its empire is more or less lost, but it maintained the power of money, of the financial power. And we see in France and in other European countries that all of the media are in the hands of this financial oligarchy. And we can see it reflected in the articles, which are all pushing for war against Iran, accusing Iran of being an aggressor, which is false. And we should not let these newspapers and media get away with it. We have to reestablish the geopolitical truth. We have to make it known that the peoples do not want war, that they want their politicians to work for the interests of the populations. And they want the conflicts to be resolved through diplomacy and not through war.
Thank you
That
so
was
much.
it.
Thank you so much, Colonel Corves. I think that was incredibly clear what you went through. And I personally very much appreciate you going through what really is controlling this process, which is a financial oligarchy. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense why these wars, they're trying to find some war to drag everybody in. As soon as they lose hold in one area, they're going someplace else. I think that's very clear from what you said and clearly what's going on. So thank you, Colonel Corves, for your presentation today. Next, I'd like to go to, we're going to come into a report actually from Carolina Dominguez from the Schiller Institute in Mexico, who have been doing quite a bit of excellent work. They had a wonderful meeting just the other day where I believe there was 140 or more young people on. That's amazing. Please, Carolina, let's hear from you.
Hola, ¿se escucha?
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Sí.
Ok,
Okay.
ok. Sí, hola, yo soy Carolina del
Okay, my
Instituto
name is
Schiller en
Carolina.
México.
I'm with the Schiller Institute in
Esta
Mexico.
semana tuvimos
This week
algunas
we had
actividades con los
a
jóvenes
number
estudiantes.
of meetings
Quiero
and
comentarles
conferences
que
with
en el Instituto
youth.
Schiller tenemos
I
una
want to tell you
actividad
that in the
constante
Schiller Institute, we
y
have
un
a
trabajo
constant
en las calles, en las
activities with running
universidades,
into youth in the
hablando con
universities and the
jóvenes
streets, speaking with
sobre la
youth
situación
on
internacional.
the international
Es
situation.
muy importante
This
que
is
no es
really
el único
important.
pilar del Instituto Schiller, pero es
This is
muy
not the only
importante
thing that
porque
the Schiller
representa
Institute
el
does
trabajo
as a
que
fundamental
llevamos,
work,
estas
but it
propuestas
represents
que se hablan
the
de la
efforts we're making
Coalición
to take these
Internacional por la Paz
ideas that
hacia
are
los
being
jóvenes.
discussed in the International Peace
Tuvimos
Coalition
tres
to the youth.
conferencias
We had 3 conferences,
coordinadas
all
principalmente
coordinated,
con profesores.
especially
Algunos
with
han participado en
professors,
todas
and
las reuniones
some of
de
these professors have also
Internacional por
participated
la
in
Paz,
these meetings
profesores
of the IPC.
interesados en que los
University
jóvenes
professors who
tengan
are
una
interested
perspectiva no
that their youth,
solamente
their
sobre
students should
sus
have
materias,
an
sus
idea
temas, sino sobre
perspective,
lo
not
que
only
está
about their
ocurriendo
subject matters, their
después de salir de
careers,
la
what they're studying,
universidad,
what's going to happen to them
sino que
after they
tengan
leave the
una
universities,
perspectiva de cómo
but
van a
to have
aportar
a concept
a
of
una
how they're going
modernidad
to
social
contribute
de paz, una visión de
to
desarrollo.
a
Esta
world of
idea
peace and a
de la
world of
paz por
development.
medio del
This
desarrollo
idea of bringing
está
about peace through
promovido
development
por la
which has been promoted by the
que hemos llamado una
International Peace
nueva
Coalition. This is what we
desarrollo.
often refer to as a new architecture of security and development. The first of these meetings, I think there are some slides that I can show so that you can have a visual idea of what we were doing.
La primera conferencia que tuvimos,
The
la
first
siguiente, por favor.
presentation, the next slide, please, was, next slide, please.
La siguiente imagen. Gracias.
Thank you.
Esta
That's
es
it.
una conferencia
This
que
is
tuvimos en
a
una
presentation
universidad
which we made
en la Ciudad
to
de
a
México,
university in Mexico City,
en donde hubo
where
alrededor de 140,
there were about
150
140,
estudiantes
150
de la
students
carrera de proyectos
who were
de gestión de agua.
studying water
Lo que
management,
fue
a career in
en
water
México, lo
management.
que presentamos fue el
Uh,
proyecto que hemos
This was in Mexico, but nonetheless, what we presented was the project which we've discussed here in the IPC a lot, which is the idea of the Oasis Plan, LaRouche's plan for the development of all of Southwest Asia. This was very well received by the young students. The questions that they made after the presentations was, how could this be brought about? If there was a war going on in the area, how could the projects be financed? What sort of jobs would this generate for people? And the reaction, despite the fact that we weren't discussing a problem related to Mexico, it was a really good response. There was great interest. You can see that I'll show you another example in a minute of the kinds of responses that we had. I'll put them in the chat. But what we saw that there was a lot of interest in favor of development. The youth don't want war. The younger people that some of us may not be as young as these students, but that university students today do not want war. They want peace, and they're willing to do what's necessary to bring that kind of peace about. Of course, there's a certain amount of apathy. We've given them an idea of what development is. And next slide, please. In the conference, we were also handing out a little flyer in the next slide, the Oasis Plan proposal, and we also gave them a handout with a QR code so that the youth could visit and watch the video that was prepared by the Institute. Shows that this is a young woman, a university student, reading the handout and taking a look at the map of Southwest Asia with the Oasis Plan. This is really important because if these youth have the idea of how you can bring about peace in one area of the world, we can of course do this in our country as well. Next slide, please. Then after that, we had a meeting, a conference in, it's a little dark, but hard to see, but this is the Technological Institute of Querétaro, Mexico. There were about 100 youth who were there in person and another 40 people tied in, connected by Zoom. At the conference, we discussed what the global South was doing in the world, as represented by the BRICS, the idea that countries can collaborate to bring about development, to bring about mutual benefit instead of having a confrontation and war between them. This is not a theory. This is being carried out in the real world through the kinds of projects and coordination and collaboration which is going on with Brazil, China, Russia, India, South Africa, and others. Next slide, please. After that presentation, we ended up with a final conference at the National University of Mexico City, the UNAM, which is the most important university in the country. This is the Department of Economics. There were about 150 youth listening to a presentation in person, and we presented there the great infrastructure projects of the Global South, not only talking about what should be done economically, but also the whole perspective of what the future has to be for youth. This last presentation, along with the other ones, points out that, well, we can say in summary that over the course of a week, we were able to directly reach about 400 youth to talk about the proposals of the Schiller Institute and that we have been presenting here in the International Peace Coalition. The response from the youth in general felt inspired by the fact that there are people who are getting together to talk about something other than war, and also that things that they knew nothing about at all about what the Global South was already carrying out and developing. One of the responses we also had from youth, which is something I want to share with you because it hasn't all been excellent, it's not all been great, and people would say, well, they said, well, what if other people don't know anything about this and they don't want to do anything that changes? What can I do? And I want to end with this idea because it's very important to give them, these youth, a perspective, but also to create in the youth the idea that it is possible to bring about peace through development, that we do not need to have a war where you have an apparent winner against everybody else, that it's the idea of Thrasymachus, that justice is the power of the greatest, the strongest. So that rather where the youth define their identity on collaboration with other youth and with other allies. And in this regard, I want to say that here in the IPC, I'm sure there are people participating, students, professors who have access to youth. And I want to call on all of you to work together with us to take these kinds of presentations to other universities. We had at these conferences, we had people connect from Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Equatorial Guinea, for example, and that we can do this in other places as well, because it's not that there's a lot of us who are doing this organizing work. There's few of us who are doing this in Mexico. But if we coordinate things with the professors, with the students, with the people who want to bring these ideas, not only to universities, but to youth in general, we can manage to speak with them. So that in these three conferences, we had, like I said, over 400 youth who got to know these ideas. So I'm issuing a call here because on the 22nd of April, a meeting of youth internationally with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, and then in May 24th and 25th, we'll have our international conference of the Schiller Institute. And this work on the youth, which we're coordinating directly with Helga, who has been guiding this work and giving us an idea of how we can get to youth, how we can organize them around a mission and to have an identity and a personality of people truly interested in the future. So I will end with that, letting you know that we're going to continue organizing off these conferences, because this is just the stepping off point of an entire movement of youth from universities and otherwise in favor of development. I want to invite you all to participate in this and put us in touch with other professors, with other youth people who we can coordinate these kinds of gatherings. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for that report. And it's a wonderful example of the type of work that everyone should be doing in recruiting youth, activating young people, getting people mobilized, and clearly the effect that you're having is resonating strongly with people. I'm also getting a sense from a number of younger folk that there is something in the air. People can sense that something is happening and they want to be part of it. So thank you so much for that, Carolina. I want to go to just a couple of comments before we jump into the question and answer period. We have Cliff Kirikoff, Professor Cliff Kirikoff, who has been on a number of times, but I want to grab him since my understanding is we're having some issues. So please, why don't you jump in, Cliff, for any responses thus far. Please go ahead.
Sure, thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Super. Well, I certainly enjoyed the presentations of our colleagues on the panel, and certainly agree with all the points made. Let me go over a few points. In terms of, Helga mentioned the Yemen situation, the Iran war issue, etc., and she drew attention to some internal Republican political issues, which I want to speak to briefly. I think Helga's quite correct. There is a split. We have the Vance, Patel, Tulsi, Ratcliffe group in the Republican Party that are working with Trump and appear to be pretty much in step with Trump. On the other hand, we have Waltz and his deputy, Alex Wong. Let me explain that a little bit. We just had this issue over the conversation over the signal supposedly secure system, which of course it's not. But at any rate, the signal issue. If you take a look at the US press, they're trying to blame it all on Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, but Hegseth had nothing to do with the leak, or if you want to call it a leak. Mr. Waltz coordinated the meeting, and his deputy, Alex Wong, made the arrangements, thus putting the journalist from the Atlantic Monthly into the mix. Now, the journalist at the Atlantic Monthly, Mr. Goldberg, I would mention to people, while he is a U.S. citizen, he did serve in the Israeli Defense Forces in the position of a prison guard. And I don't know whether or not he has dual citizenship, but he was serving in the Israeli Defense Ministry, and he has written over the years many false and misleading stories for the Atlantic, of which he is the editor in Washington. So what we see here is an internal Republican competition, I guess you'd say, for the ear of President Trump. And I would mention that Mr. Waltz, a former congressman, was also closely associated with the Romney for President campaign. And Alex Wong, his deputy, who arranged this meeting on the so-called signal system, was actually an issues person, a top issues person on the Romney for President campaign, which that whole network working for Romney were, of course, part of the neocon, or part of the neocon policy network. Also, Wong's position prior to being hired by Waltz for the National Security Council position, he worked for Senator Tom Cotton, who is a hysterical, neoconized Republican senator, probably one of the most aggressive Republican senators, who desires war with Iran and desires war with China and all the rest. So I just want to put that into place. I think Helga was very correct in introducing that issue of the internal politics of the Trump administration and the various types of Republican, let's say, personnel that he has recruited. We can remember that when Trump was first president, he made a lot of mistakes in recruiting people because he was misled by his advisors into recruiting certain people. At that time, Trump was really not familiar with either the Republican Party or the swamp in Washington. So he was a bit naive on that, and he admitted it. Unfortunately, in his second term, he has not vetted people closely enough. It is thought that, for example, Susie Wiles from Florida pulled in Waltz and other Florida types to the administration who may or may not be loyal to Trump's vision. Now, in terms of Russiagate issue, the release of the FBI files and so on, so far the Seth Rich files have not been released. It was said, it's not known for sure, but it was said that Seth Rich was the contact to WikiLeaks and all of that. Seth Rich was murdered in Washington, D.C., and the FBI has withheld those files. So in terms of the Russiagate issue, we would have to actually have access to the declassified Seth Rich files to make a better assessment of what happened there in terms of the Russiagate situation, the Russiagate scandal, we can call it. In terms of Trump's commitment to multipolarity, well, of course, he, as a businessman, is transactional. I think he likes to be working with the chairman of the boards of other countries, i.e. Mr. Putin, Mr. Xi, etc. So Trump, as a businessman dealing with other chairmen of the boards, poses a threat to because he's pragmatic and transactional, poses a threat to the neocons and neoliberals that have been mentioned, who are ideological, and they're ideological against China and ideological against Iran and Russia. Why are the neocons ideologically against China and Russia? It's very simple. The neocons' main objective is to protect and expand Israel. That's where their first loyalty lies. So the neocons want to interfere with, disrupt US-China and US-Russia relations. Why? Because if the United States, Russia, and China decide to work together in concert, they can achieve many positive things on the world stage, not to mention promoting peace in the Middle East, which is the very last thing that the neocons want to do, because they support an expansionist Zionist ideology, the Jabotinsky ideology, and revisionist Zionism, which calls for a greater Israel, a geographically greater Israel, which they are, of course, Bibi's now working on assiduously today. So the neocon strategy then is to try to disrupt President Trump from establishing better relations or reestablishing relations with Russia and, let's say, restarting relations with China to try to work together. And of course, that can involve other major powers such as India also, and to try to bring some stability and peace and development to this world. In terms of a new paradigm, great power cooperation, absolutely. Helga brought that up. US, Russia, China, and toss India in there if you wish. And the new paradigm, of course, as has been raised before, relates to a vision of a peaceful international system, peaceful international order, and cooperation of major powers. And we can look back for a 19th century model, the Concert of Europe, which, generally speaking, kept peace in Europe from the Congress of Vienna in 1815 all the way down to World War I, 1914, with an interruption, a minor interruption, the Crimean War and the Franco-Prussian War. But in general, the European powers worked to provide some stability in Europe for a century. So that could be a cooperative model, the idea of a concert of Europe. And of course, that is blended with the other idea of that Helga always raises, the Peace of Westphalia and cooperation in terms of international cooperation for peace. And that, of course, requires diplomacy and not the militarization of global politics, which unfortunately we're in a phase of right now. And the Europeans are going completely over the top with the militarization rhetoric coming out of Germany and Macron in France and Starmer in England and so on. So we need to think of the theme of diplomacy rather than militarization and the use of the resurrection of diplomacy, which in a way President Trump is trying to do. Now, on the Iran question, some argue that this Yemen activity, bombing Yemen, etc., is setting the stage for dragging the United States further, and that is to say, into a war with Iran. And of course, the neoconservatives, and because they support Israeli national interests, the neoconservatives are a leading voice in trying to propel the United States into a war against Iran, which is always a possibility. And of course, Israel could trigger that. So it's not all within the US capacity to avoid if Israel decides to trigger such a war against Iran.
Right.
Iran does not need nuclear weapons. I would point out that Tulsi Gabbard just several days ago stated the intelligence community's assessment that Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program at this time, and they do not have nuclear weapons at this time. Now, that was made as a public statement by Tulsi Gabbard, who is head of our intelligence community, which is about 18 different intelligence gathering organizations, the CIA just being one of those 18. So you can see her power and her authority presiding over the entire intelligence community. That assessment that Iran does not possess a nuclear weapon has been the assessment, I would emphasize, of the intelligence community since 2007. So since 2007, the United States intelligence community has consistently—
Cliff, could you just take a few more seconds here?
Sure,
So we
that they
can
have
continue
no—
the discussion. Thank you.
Sure, that they have no weapons program. That's the major things I want to bring forward before I have to leave for another commitment. So thank you very much, and look forward to joining you again.
Great. Thank you, Cliff. Always appreciative of your insights into the situation. So thank you so much for joining us and hopping on and giving your perspective. I want to jump back to Helga to see, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, if you have any response to anything thus far.
Well, there were many interesting things. I would like to thank Hussein for having given us such a comprehensive assessment. And I would like to just suggest one thing, since you mentioned in the very beginning, in the very end, that economic cooperation between Iran and the United States could actually play a positive role in confidence building and so forth. You know, maybe Iran should promote at this point the Oasis plan as a comprehensive approach for the entire situation. I would like to get your comments on that. And to Carolina, I want to absolutely say, you know, fantastic. We must get all the use from many countries because, you know, in Germany, for example, we meet again and again youth who say, you know, that it's not fair to them that they get this war situation. And, you know, I think if we would organize a mass movement of young people fighting for development, this could really be the game changer for the whole strategic situation. So keep up the work, and other people should take an example of what you're doing. To Colonel Corves, I just want to encourage you, you know, keep saying these things, especially for the German people. They have to listen to a sane voice from France, which is very much appreciated. And to Cliff, I only want to say, you know, while I agree with most of what you said, except the concept of Europe of the 19th century, I think is not something I would promote. I would rather go to de Gaulle's idea of Europe of the fatherlands based on the sovereignty, because the concept of Europe was very much still based on monarchies and oligarchies, and they manipulated the situation quite a bit. So that would be my only encouragement, to go rather to a Europe of the fatherlands.
Well, Ambassador Mousavian, if you have a response.
Yeah, Helga, I agree with you. Oasis plan always is a really good case for every Middle Eastern countries to invest, to support, and to go for it, including Iran. The reason I mentioned the economic cooperation is that for President Trump, big economic and trade agreements always has been a priority. And for the Iranian side, since 40 years under sanctions and pressures, they have tremendous capacity for reconstruction and reconstructing the country. Europe and the US, they have huge history, big possibilities, golden opportunities to engage with Iran on hundreds of billions of dollars of economic cooperation rather than always threatening or mutual blame. That's why I mentioned as one of the important issues in order to reconstruct Iran-West relations. However, OISIS could be one of those. Definitely, I agree with you, Helga. And it should be supported regionally because OISIS is practically a regional plan. Many countries, they should be involved.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your response. And Helga, I don't know if there's anything more you'd like to discuss with the ambassador while we have him on. Otherwise, we'll continue. I'd like to bring on a very notable peace activist and world-renowned pianist, world-famous pianist, into the discussion. His name is Alberto Portugues. And I apologize if I'm butchering your name, but I know that you have a response and question as well. Please go ahead. You're muted, Alberto. Here, I'm sending you a request to unmute. Try it again. You see there's a little request that says to unmute, or you can go to the bottom of your screen on the left side. There's a microphone. There we go. I can hear you now. Oh, we lost you. Oh, we can't hear you, Alberto. You're muted again. Oh, Helga? Helga, were you trying to say something?
No, she was waving to try to get his attention.
Okay. Alberto, you are still muted. Dennis, are you able to contact him? I don't have his. Well, while we're working this out,
Can I be taken off interpreter, please?
okay.
Okay, Mr. Portugués, Alberto Portugués, no, su micrófono está apagado. Ahí está. Yeah, ahora sí. Yes, we've got you. Great.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody. And I would like to say also in relation to the peace work with young people that I'm now 84 years old, and I have seen young people all my life since I was young myself. Work for peace. And I realized as a very young person, that there was no way we could achieve peace by training armies to fight and kill, destroy, by promoting war industry. And that is, for me, perhaps peace in the world. Politicians are the only ones who are allowed to purchase from the war industry. In fact, in many cases, the government own the war industries. And the only way, they are the only ones who can order armies to fight, to go on killing rampages. They are the only ones who can sign export contracts, import contracts, or sales or purchases of weapons. It's all in the hands. And I never forget reading Franklin Delano Roosevelt saying that no war in the world is an accident. If there is a war, it means that the fighting sides have agreed to it. Without that agreement, there is no war. This is why I asked the Iranian ambassador if United States and Israel want to have a war with Iran, but Iran does not agree, can war happen?
Alberto, I'm very sorry. It's
No,
I can
cannot
understand.
you can? Okay.
To have a war, we have to leave. And politicians are obliged to lie. They have to lie all the time because they all know that with the war industry, all we can do is create wars. I mean, not us, but politicians. And this is why the whole world, all the 99, I would say, 100% of the population of the world cannot continue if we don't make any money to stop.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alberto Portugues. There were audio problems in what you were saying, so that it was broken off a bit, but I think I got the basics of it, and I want to make sure that everybody, but especially Mrs. LaRouche, understood what you were saying. So I'm going to take the liberty to quickly summarize what you said. Hopefully my audio will be a little better for her. What Mr. Portugues said was that so long as there is a war industry, there will never be peace. It is the politicians who order this. They're the ones who order that weapons be bought. It is the governments that are tied into the war industries. It is the politicians that order war. They're the ones who export the weapons. I never forget, he said, what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, that no war is an accident. If an accident occurs, it is because both sides agreed to it. And that's why I asked the question of His Excellency, the Ambassador, if the United States and Israel want to launch a war against Iran, but Iran does not want to have that war, will there still be a war? We have to go about in making peace. Politicians lie and lie. War is an industry that creates wars the whole world, and this unfortunately is where the audio got a little worse. But I believe he was referring to how in 1999 there were various proposals in this direction, and we have to have a world movement for peace. I hope that's at least an approximate summary of what you said. Is that okay?
Yes.
Your audio
in society, because there can always be violent people in society.
Your audio, Mr. Portugues, is really terrible right now. Okay, I'm really sorry. Your audio is terrible. We've got,
I'm
but I
sorry.
think we got the, no, it's not your fault. It's the internet. And probably the people who don't want to hear what you have to say. But thank you for that. I think we got the basic idea. And let's see if Mrs. LaRouche or
I know that. I know that.
you know that.
I
Yeah,
know
right.
that.
Okay.
Yes, I know that. But you know, I have many politicians friends, and they all say to me, Alberto, you are absolutely right. But what can we do? We have all these millions of people working, making all these weapons, and we have to pay their salaries every month if we don't have war. And the worst is that even without war, if you just for testing and just for training armies, we pollute our atmosphere, our air, lands, seas, everything. We destroy nature, even without killing people. So it's all negative. Why is a warship called destroyer? Because it is for destroying. You don't build anything. Everything is a good business for the construction industry and for people who sell coffins. But otherwise, for humanity, makes absolutely nothing. We have to really achieve the universal abolition of militarism forever and really live in a civilized world where there is no point. We are not it was a kind of occupied territory and take over. That is no longer the case. If Britain had to give back so the territories, France and Italy, all countries have to give back the countries they invaded. So there is now it's all politicians have to be inventing causes. And I accept in the United Nations, and this is why the Universal War Club. It's a war club, and I saw so many wars being concocted, negotiated at the United Nations. I saw diplomats and politicians become richer and richer and richer by allowing their own countries to be destroyed. I saw this many times. So to me, there is no argument. If I don't want my children to play with each other, to fight with each other, I don't give them a weapon each and tell them. So I tell my daughter, have it with you just in case your brother attacks you. And I say the same to the boy. No, if I don't want them to fight, I don't give them.
Okay, very good. Helga, did you catch the?
Yes.
And then.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was really came across much more clearly. So Helga, your comments?
Well, yeah, I fully agree with Alberto. And I would actually invite you to join our efforts to really, go against this recent phase of the remilitarization in Europe. Von der Leyen, 800 billion, and in Germany, Merz wants to have 400 billion, but without a cap. So this will go up immediately, and this is all money created out of budget. Therefore, the historic parallel to the MEPO bills with which Hjalmar Schacht financed the war economy 80 years ago is really the precedent, and the end result will be to go to war, because that's the logic, as you correctly say. But let's just join our efforts, because we are preparing a fact sheet where we show where this money is going, because like Merz is at the same time saying, now we need to have a complete review of all programs. We need in German, Kassensturz, meaning, they will go after the cutting of all the social programs, the health sector, the infrastructure, everything will be slashed, not built up. So let's join our efforts to really educate the people, because if you don't go the other way, right now they're converting VW and Porsche into military production, at least some factories. And the exact opposite would be necessary, namely to reconvert the machine tool segments of the military industrial complex and retool it for peaceful production, tractors, fast train systems, other things which are useful. So I just want to offer to you that we join our efforts to get this message out together widely. This is a ongoing work in progress, and I would like to brief you more about it, maybe in a separate phone call.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we're going to be moving on to the discussion period. I really look forward to the discussion amongst the panelists and the attendance members, the people attending this meeting today. I'm going to tell everyone, if you're on over Zoom or Rumble or X, whatever platform you're on, if you'd like to participate in the discussion with the speakers today, you must be registered. Please go to the schillerinstitute.com website, and right on the top of the website, there is an RSVP link. If you go there, register, you will get the Zoom link to join the meeting. And with that, we'll transfer over to that discussion period. Just let me know when we're offline, Jose.